Destiny 2 is only days away, and as the sequel to one of the most successful new IPs ever, it brings its fair share of pressure to developer Bungie. It's a chance to not only expand on the success of the first Destiny, but also to show that Bungie is willing to adapt and evolve as fan expectations morph with each passing month. To put it bluntly, Destiny 2 is Bungie's chance to prove that the studio can still set new bars. Because that's exactly what Bungie has done. It laid the foundations for things we take for granted today. Freedom of movement in first-person shooters, and multiplayer matchmaking in console games. We also might not be waiting for the Xbox One X to release if Halo hadn't made the case for Microsoft's console push 16 years ago. And say what you will about Destiny, but it has found an audience to say the least. Like PlanetSide or Warframe, its world blends first-person shooter elements with those often consigned to MMOs. Ubisoft chased that formula with The Division and emerged with greater initial sales than even Destiny. And then BioWare, the iconic studio lauded for its story-driven RPGs, seems to be chasing the MMO shooter genre with its upcoming Project Anthem. So, given Bungie's ongoing impact, now seems as good a time as any to look back at how its games changed things, and to remember some of its greatest triumphs that often go overlooked today. The story of Bungie's founding has been told before, dozens of times, by hundreds of different people. They all paint the picture of a ragtag group of irreverent college grads, always looking for new ways to do things. Although they're arguably best known for their work on the Xbox, Bungie founders Alex Seropian and Jason Jones began their work on the niche Macintosh platform. They created early games such as the top-down shooter Operation Desert Storm and the RPG Minotaur: The Labyrinths of Crete. Soon after, they realized the value of 3D graphics and set to work on a port for Minotaur. However, the game didn't translate well into the new perspective, and Bungie pivoted. In 1993, it made Pathways into Darkness, the first-person shooter that established the company as a legitimate player in the burgeoning world of game development. From this point forward, Bungie was agile, finding success with its ability to adapt to difficult circumstances. With juggernauts such as Doom and System Shock on PC, Bungie released Marathon, the first in a trilogy of shooters that would give Macintosh players their own first-person tentpole. And while it didn't find as big of an audience as its counterparts, Marathon did help establish one of the genre's most important mechanics. We take free look for granted today in most shooters, but when Marathon released, the ability to completely control your view with a mouse was novel. In the original Doom, you could only move your view from side to side. In 1994's System Shock, you had to toggle into mouse look. Others consigned your aiming controls entirely to the keyboard. Marathon's freedom of movement popularized a level of verticality that's the default now, and some of the best multiplayer map design makes good use of it. Games such as Counter-Strike, Overwatch, and the original Quake are legends largely because of Marathon's precedent. Despite Marathon's oft-overlooked importance, it didn't find the audience Bungie would amass with its later titles, but it sold well enough for the studio to continue experimenting. It expanded into the PC market. It created Myth, a strategy title that garnered a cult community, and Oni, a third-person action game that would later be ported by Rockstar Games. But as the 90s came to a close, Bungie began work on another project. It was said to be a real-time strategy game, similar to Bungie's earlier Myth, but set in a sci-fi universe. However, the team decided against this, opting instead to make a third-person shooter using a similar futuristic setting. But Bungie turned on a dime yet again, creating something completely different than the original plan. Halo's impact on the world of video games is pervasive. It's almost omnipresent, so much so that we often forget how much the series really has changed things throughout its lifespan. For one thing, I don't think we would be nearing the release of the Xbox One X if it weren't for Halo Combat Evolved. The original Xbox may have gone extinct, along with Microsoft's efforts to push into the console market at the time, if Bungie hadn't signed the deal to bring its shooter to the new platform. Halo made the Xbox a contender in the console space and laid the seeds that would make Microsoft a powerhouse in the gaming world. In a similar vein, Xbox Live might not be the staple it is today if Halo 2 hadn't become a multiplayer phenomenon when it released, setting the standards for fluid matchmaking and helping games such as Quake 3 Arena to push console online multiplayer. could go into the countless innovations Halo introduced to the shooter genre throughout the years, but I don't have that kind of time here. But I will say that Halo games since the start have also just been fun, and it's difficult to pinpoint why. Maybe it's the way each weapon has a different feeling, or maybe it's the way various enemy types affect the ebb and flow of combat, or maybe it's the way it uses open environments to create chaotic battles, but also cramped corridors to introduce terrifying foes. The moment-to-moment gameplay is always hard to describe, but I think that's what makes it so good. Bungie spent a ridiculous amount of time making you forget there was a controller in your hand. Countless games have borrowed from Halo's many iterations, trying to mimic the flow of its mechanics and pacing of its firefights. To this day, there are few shooters I could point to that have succeeded, though. The new Doom, Titanfall 2, and of course, Destiny come to mind, but more on that shortly. All of this is to say that Halo was sort of a miracle. It was almost a real-time strategy game, it was almost a third-person shooter, but Bungie made it work as something else entirely. And it was so good that it legitimized the Xbox, and later Xbox Live, and console online multiplayer across the board. After Halo Reach, Bungie's farewell to the legendary series, it was hard to imagine where it might go next. Like many people, I have a complicated relationship with Destiny. There are times when I love it. There are times when I hate it. I'll call it boring one day only to finish a harrowing Nightfall strike with friends the next. I don't always feel as if Destiny is respecting my time, and yes, I think it can be exploitative in the ways its random loot system works. Back when he was at GameSpot, Danny O'Dwyer did an episode of The Point that I still watch sometimes, comparing vanilla Destiny to a slot machine, where you have no control over your rewards. But regardless, I'm excited for Destiny 2. It sounds like Bungie knows what it needs to do to make the series the juggernaut of hyper-connected fun that it could be, and I'm cautiously optimistic that it'll pull it off, or at least get a little bit closer. Because make no mistake, Destiny is a phenomenon. Before the Division usurped it, Destiny was the most successful new IP ever, selling over $500 million on its first day. It took the pitch-perfect feel of Bungie's Halo games and placed them in an MMO. It connected hundreds of thousands of players in cooperative strikes, 6-player raids, and a shared social space. Destiny wasn't the first game to do this, but much like Halo established consoles as a viable platform for PC-quality shooters, Destiny makes the strongest case for MMO design in shooters. I'm not sure what Bungie will do after Destiny 2, if it ever does decide to leave it behind. But throughout its history, Bungie has proven that it knows how to adapt. It knows how to change. And in doing so, the studio has flourished. It's one of the few developers that can claim to have had a massive impact on video games in general. It found ways to go against the current without sacrificing quality in the process. We may not always recognize it right away, but Bungie's influence is everywhere. It's just a matter of looking in the right places. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching episode 13 of Reboot. As a longtime Halo fan, I had a lot of fun making this one, and as always, we want your input. So in the meantime, before our next episode, get your questions in. What'd you think of this episode? Are you excited for Destiny 2? You can hit us up on Twitter at JacobDeck or Mahardy, and as always, leave a thought in the comments below, and we might feature it on our next episode. We'll see you then.